We've gotten through a lot of content. Let's take a recap of what we've learned so far and where we'll be going next. We have learned how to configure our router module. We'll use router module.forRoot, and we know that since the router module needs configuration, we have to do this before we can pass it into our app module first. We've learned how to link to different routes using the router link, where we can just pass in a straight string. Or we've also used the router link where we evaluate some data and pass that back so that we can create things like URL parameters. We've learned how to get the data out of a URL. We've learned how to get the data out of a route using the activated route and this.route.snapshot, and we'll go into the parameters and grab the username. We've learned how to create a 404 page using the match all route, where the wildcard is 2 asterisks. We've learned how to get data using a route parameter and services. And this is a great way which will lead into how we move into the dashboard, since the service is totally separate from any other parts of our application. So that's a lot of good things that we've covered so far. That's some basic routing, URL parameters, basic routing, linking to different things, 404 pages. Let's move into more advanced things, and let's talk about what's coming up next. Right now, we only have the single app module. We'll be moving into multiple modules, and we'll see how all of those work together. Each of those modules is going to have its own router as well. This is going to bring us into multiple routers. We'll also talk about child routing. And one really great feature that the router has that comes out of the box is that when our application starts to get larger and larger, one really good thing that we'll want to have is lazy loading. And this means one section of our site only loads when we get to it. If you've used UI Router, then you know that there's the resolve way to get data. Instead of doing it from ng on init, it would make sense to get data before the component was actually instantiated, so that the component, when it loaded, it already had the data it needed. So we'll do data resolving next. Something the router should also be doing is authentication guarding. We don't want a person to get to a certain route if they're not authenticated to do so. So auth guarding is in there. And one last thing we'll talk about is if a user is editing a form, we don't want them to leave unless they've saved the data in their form. So we'll talk about data safety guarding. We'll ask a user if they want to leave and discard all their changes before they can get away from a component. All right, so that's a lot of stuff learned and a lot of things going forward. We're going to do some refactoring. We'll move the About section of our website into its own module. And that About section will have its own router as well.